Greetings and salutation. Welcome back to another video, and today is a very special video, if you can't tell, by me being a very much a young man from the 80s of Tokyo, Japan. And if you haven't already get it, we're talking about something that is very close and dear to my heart, and that is, of course, Shenmue. Yeah, the HD collection is due out any moment, and now over on the PS4, Xbox One, and PC as well. And this seemed like a good opportunity for me to let you guys know, if you are new to the Shenmue saga here, and you need to know what you get yourself into before hopping into Shenmue 1 and 2 HD collection, and why is Shenmue such an important game, and why so many people for the last 2 decades almost have completely fallen in love with this series, and honestly is one of the most die-hard communities out there. So let's get to that and let's discuss some Shenmue. So for anyone that's not aware what Shenmue is and why it's so important, is of course we gotta go back to the beginning, back to 1999 at the launch of the Dreamcast, the wonderful little console that just did not have the time needed, but it did have enough time to become great and fondly remembered. Just not really a moneymaker. But beside all that, when Shenmue came out originally on the console, a lot of interest and hype and moment, and Sega honestly really seemed like they put a lot of their well-being onto that series back with the cradle of from Virtual Fighter Yuzuki and his epicness of his career of making hundreds of Sega games, and honestly some of the best Sega games. So with this, what could go wrong other than the Dreamcast? And honestly, not much, because Shenmue honestly have changed the way of video games for the future and the past as well. Because honestly, if you played any game in the last 18 or so years, it more than likely have some items and some game design choices that were founded within Shenmue. So what made Shenmue such a big deal to so many, and honestly have changed the way of gaming for the last multiple decades almost at that point? And of course, for anyone that's not aware of Shenmue, it was originally released back on the Dreamcast back in the early 2000s, and was headed by one of the greatest game designers of, well, game designing, right up there with Miyamoto, is of course Yuzuki, who made multi amounts of Sega games from the beginning all the way up to present day of Shenmue 1 and 2. And honestly, his ideal and vision is what made the game so great. And honestly, with his successful ride through Sega, it's probably one of the reasons why Sega give Shenmue so much money for 1 and 2 to actually try to make this dream, and in some way could possibly be said to put the future of hardware on his shoulder. Sadly, we've seen how that worked out, but that's not exactly to Shenmue's fault. That had more to do with just Sega in general at the time period. But why Shenmue is so important, and in return, if you have played any games over the last 18 or so years, you probably played something that has something to do with Shenmue, or Shenmue originally created, or at least made it to the point of being something that many games in the future are going to imitate, copy, and try to hand at. With the most obvious one of being the open world and the QTE. As we all know, the last generation for the Xbox One, Xbox 360 and PS3, we had multi games that introduced QTEs into them, and a lot of that could come from Shenmue, and in some cases, any of Dragon Lair technically did it also. Elite give the QTE a name, a proper name, and pretty much every game, for the most part, who had it, pretty much do them identical to the way Shenmue did it. And outside of that, we do have the open like area. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing to the extent that a lot of open world games have aspired to, especially about the many years here. But for the time period, back in the early 2000s, what Shenmue were doing with an open city and it docks and everything was a massive jump as far as what you could do in video games up to that point, with a lot of video games being very linear, and in some cases when we did have more open world stuff, it was nowhere near the extent of storytelling that we had here or the freedom that had here. And even to now, some games still don't give you the same amount of freedom that Shenmue did. The only game that kind of come close to it in a lot of ways is the Yakuza series, which in return got tied to Shenmue being a Sega product. But the game itself, with the introduced minigame, city, multiple NPC to talk to, a murder mystery style mafia tale, right along with a very grounded, mainly character-driven story where we are trying to find out information about who killed his father, and then return to try to get some revenge in return. And having the hook in it, right along with the ability to pretty much go and do whatever you want at any point for the most part, is something that no game ever touch. Any to the point of Shenmue Japan, like, oh, you can just go get a part-time job and literally you can play the rest of the game doing your part-time job if you want. Any of it not the ideal choice because of bad endings, but nonetheless, it's something you could do. Or you could just honestly stay through figuring out who killed your father and just go play classic arcade games and classic Sega games that honestly on their own still holds up at that time, and even still hold up to this day with Hang On and Fate Harrier, and then right along with all the collectibles, and then you have the fighting mechanics of actually getting into real-time deep combat that is designed after Virtual Fighter, since it was originally meant to be a Virtual Fighter game. And in return, you got a deep fighting game style combat with an RPG mechanic, with an open world, with a character driven, with the freedom. It honestly might seem quaint for today's standards in some ways, but just thinking of it back in 2000, 2001, and it was forever before we any got to a point that any came close to the stuff you could do in Shenmue 1. And then not even counting getting into Shenmue 2 with adding any more freedom, of more part-time jobs, more side activity, more hidden stuff, more like advance. And the game literally doubled in size when we got to Shenmue 2. And in return, what Shenmue were doing literally set the industry on the paths it had been on for the last 18 plus years at that point. And that cannot be understated. But why did the game itself touch me and many others? Is, of course, the game itself is a super grounded, super character driven here, and in return, it was so easy to just get invested, and then not counting the environment in Shenmue 1 and 2 of being designed after real environments, to the point of you can literally take a tour in Japan of all the places from Shenmue 1 if you see fit. And in return, it just added that grounded level of reality that no other game have ever really done up to that point. And then on top of that, for at least the American side, it very much added this mystical draw that Japan and many other countries had in that time period before the internet was a mass assumption to the point where everything get pretty much out at any point. That wasn't the case for anyone who grew up in the 90s and very early 2000s with anything gaming, anime, like anything of that genre. You would know how magical a lot of Japan seemed to be. And then playing this and seeing a side of that, and not just the mainstream stuff that everybody dreams of when they think of Japan, but more the out in the middle of nowhere type of Japan, which in return to learn so much more and more wonder to it all. And then not counting like the mythological, like, underlining through line that been building with the whole Phoenix Mill collection, or the little muffins of the story, other than killing the guy who killed your father. It really just added to the groundness and the mythological and like magical charm of what Japan could have been at that time. And then on top of that, honestly, getting more into the more cheesier stuff is honestly Shenmue 1 localization was not the best. I think we can all agree on that. It's not the best. It's still not the best. It will never be the best. But what it is something that is a little more literal in translation. So in Return, you do get a lot more, like, very odd conversation and odd characters that just stick with you because it's just so odd. Which in Return, like, that juxtaposed to the realism of it all. And it just very much fill you with a feeling of like this is just something odd, interesting, and just magical about it all. And then on top of that, having all this Sega knowledge going up to that point with the great Hawa that is the Dreamcast, with the fan service you got on that as well, with the capsule toy being all Sega properties such as Sonic, Bait Harrier, you have some of like the bigger tempos, like Sega stuff in it, not counting the arcade stuff. Actually getting into the arcade stuff that wasn't video game related as well. And then also getting into the whole thing of like all the little mini games you can do to unlock stuff. To the point of literally having a Sega Saturn in your house if you see fit, or lucky enough to see fit. And because of all that, it just had the nostalgia, the magic, the charm, the mythology, the very cringy, but at the same time you can't help but love type of characters, wrapped in the bubble of a very like deep combat RPG with a murder mystery slap mafia tale. It just was nothing like it at the time, and not any on a technical level, just on a game level. It was not really anything like this. And when you play this, it like so much, like so replayable, just because there's so many little things off to the side that you can just totally miss by not talking to a character or not being in the area at a certain time. And in Return, the game itself just seemed to always be, every time you play it, you always discover something new and something interesting. And because of that, it really did like bore down into the psyche of it all. And like I said, when we get to Shenmue 2, it's literally just that, but more of that. And on top of that, just the ending, which I won't go into for anyone, once again, that have not actually played it, and it can be your full step into Shenmue, but the ending that you end up getting, it moved a lot of that lower, like, background type of story to the forefront, and I really do have that moment of, like, what is actually happening here, to the point of trying to comprehend it all, just like Rio is. And like you as a player is as well just so struck and so like what happening. And not a lot of games can give you that vibe, that the same thing that the character are feeling, you feeling as a player. And they're not counting that being a cliffhanger, which in return probably also kind of helped in the Shenmue communities, because fan film, comics, all sorts of fan equation out there to try to solve the question of what gonna happen. And it just left the series so open that it could go in 100 different directions. And honestly, going into Shenmue 3, which may or may not be one of the disappointment, is will it live up to that just because of how much time we have, how much time we have to come up with our own theory, ideal, our own closures. It should be interesting to see what's going to happen when we get to Shenmue 3. But nonetheless, that as well was another thing built into the community and the fan base to make it so ravenous. And then not counting the many rumors and random interview we have heard for so many years talking about Shenmue as a whole. Might have been an AD collection, might be Shenmue 3, and it was just a lot of build up and a lot of disappointment and a lot of the fans itself coming together to pretty much try to pat us all on the back to make us feel a little bit better about the situation we have been in for almost 2 decades now. But with that being said, as someone hopping new into it, that might seem like a lot of baggage. That might seem like a lot to live up to. It might just seem overwhelming in a lot of ways. But deep down, if you can put your mindset into the early 2000s, if you're old enough to remember what video game were like then, or you can enjoy something that seems a little tilted, as in not proper in a lot of ways, and enjoy the more kookier side of Shenmue, any if it was intentional or wasn't, and you can wrap your head around that and remember the time period of the early 2000s, it will be something you will probably enjoy. Hopefully will enjoy. Not expecting this to, set the world on fire outside the Shenmue community, but this collection hopefully will bring some new faces and hopefully let some people understand why the game is so special and why is it such a important game to the video game industry as a whole. So hopefully you guys will give it a shot. Hopefully you will enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, I totally understand. Like I said, it's a special cup of tea, and in return, how much of a special case it is might be built up just because of the last almost 20 years of nothing almost. Or it could be something you're going to get fully invested in, fully enjoy, and become one of us in the Shenmue community. Either way, both is okay. You just give it a try and see how you truly feel, and hopefully try to recognize what the game is and what it did for the video game industry. So overall, that in my opinion of why Shenmue 1 and 2 and the collection is so important, why you should be interested, and hopefully get you enough to actually check this out. Like it or not, just give it a go and honestly appreciate it for what it is, even if it might not be up your alley. So, with that being said, since the game comes out publicly to everyone here in a few hours, if you are watching it roughly when it's going live, let me know in the comments, are you going to pick it up? Are you playing it? And if you have already started playing the HD collection, let me know below, what is your opinion? Is this something you've been wanting forever? Are you a part of the community? Are you wanting to be a part of the community? Let me know below truly what you believe and how you feel about the collection as a whole, if you have checked it out, and the Shenmue as a whole as well. So anyway, I've been your wonderful host, Ryozuki Whipoff, also known as Troy from extraplay.info, and I will catch you in the next video or tomorrow, where we're going to be doing a 100% playthrough of Shenmue 1 and 2, doing everything, getting every achievement, doing whatever we can do. It's going to be a fun ride. It's probably going to be multiple 24-hour streams more than likely. So make sure you come on over twitch.tv/PonyShow if you want to watch it over there, and it will be available over on a YouTube/PonyShow as well. So with that being said, you all have a wonderful, wonderful Shenmue Eve, and I will catch you in the next video tomorrow. So till then, have a good one, guys.